Thank you, Jana. We're following new developments out of Springfield. A long-anticipated redevelopment project is finally getting underway in downtown Springfield.
And Western Mass News reporter Matt Price is getting answers on what's planned.
These three properties, located at 113 to 117 State Street, 1135 to 1155 Main Street, and 11 to 21 Stockbridge Street in downtown Springfield, have mostly sat empty for the last few years. In fact, the bank foreclosed on them, allowing the Springfield Redevelopment Authority to pick them up. Now, after a few years of finding a way to redevelop them, SRA Executive Director Amanda Pham says a process is now underway to make it happen.
This gives us the opportunity to determine the future ownership of these buildings and ensure their redevelopment and consistency with our goals and objectives of the master planning efforts that have been made to date.
Next steps were discussed Monday morning at City Hall. Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno says the idea is to create synergy and investment in the downtown area.
My dream and my goal is to create a promenade down our South Main Street district into the South End district night and day and night to experience the Italian-American delicacies that are down there.
These so-called opportunity properties are located just across the street from MGM Springfield. Casino president and chief operating officer Chris Kelly says this is a plan for a better tomorrow.
Those challenges have been real, but all of those have been outweighed by the tremendous power and potential that has been woven into tomorrow.
The city's chief development officer, Tim Sheehan, tells Western Mass News some ideas for these properties include housing and offices on the upper levels, as well as retail possibilities on the ground level.
Is ground floor activation in terms of bringing activity to the street level and getting pedestrian engagement with activity that's happening at the street level. So that is one of the focuses of the RFQ. We are very specific that you have to be bringing forward projects that have a high degree of ground floor activation.
Developers can now bid on the project until the end of March, with much of the physical redevelopment work to begin later this year. Sheehan predicts redevelopment to be complete within 2 years. In Springfield, Matt Price, Western Mass News.